The initial wave of free agency brought plenty of change to the Eagles roster. While the Eagles were quick to add wide receiver DeSean Jackson, defensive tackle Malik Jackson and linebacker L.J. Fort, the squad also lost a handful of notable contributors. Defensive end Michael Bennett was sent to the Patriots, Golden Tate signed with the Giants, Jordan Matthews left for the 49ers and Jordan Hicks earned a massive deal with the Cardinals. Along with those changes, the Eagles still have several incumbent free agents on the open market. The team could also look to bargain hunt in free agency, filling those aforementioned holes with upgraded or equal talent. Below is our projection of the current depth chart. Sad face. Editor's note: this depth chart only includes players under contract. Italics indicates starters. QB, Carson Wentz. Thoughts: Wentz is in the permanent driver's seat at quarterback. Recovering from a stress fracture in his back, Wentz is expected to be healthy in time for the off-season program. Likely backup Nate Sudfeld is currently a restricted free agent on a second-round tender. With the starting quarterback openings limited to just Miami, Sudfeld should be back for a third season in Philadelphia. The Eagles are likely to add a third and maybe even a fourth quarterback to the mix at some point. Our B. Corey Clement, Wendell Smallwood, Josh Adams, Boston Scott. Thoughts: Clement, when healthy, is the most talented member of this quartet. Coming off a season-ending knee injury, Clement is probably best served as a third-down back, occasional gadget player in the passing game. Behind him, Smallwood and Josh Adams will probably compete for the third-string gig after the Eagles add a lead back in free agency or the draft. Scott will need to stand out as a returner to make the roster. WR, Alshon Jeffrey, DeSean Jackson, Nelson Agholor, Mac Hollins, Shelton Gibson, Braxton Miller, Doran Miller, Johnny Holton, Mark and Michelle, Carlton Agudozi. Thoughts: Jeffrey returns as the Eagles' top receiver, while Agholor continues to instill confidence from the slot. The Eagles made a wise choice in hanging on to Agholor, even if he is playing on a $9.4 million fifth-year option. Eagles also made a smart move by trading for the returning Jackson, who is the deep threat the team has needed since he left the first time. Behind that trio, there are a lot of unknowns. Hollins missed all of last season with a groin injury but is a standout on special teams. Gibson was a strong gunner in the game's third phase but caught just one pass, despite all of the injury turmoil at the wide receiver position this past year. Braxton Miller and Doran Miller spent all of last season on the practice squad and showed enough promise to hang around on reserve future deals. Holton could surprise some with his speed during training camp, as he has the most playing experience outside of the starting three. Michelle and Agudozi will probably be competing for the practice squad spots occupied by the Millers last year. Tate, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert, Joshua Perkins will tie. Thoughts: Ertz and Goedert form the best tight end tandem in the league. Ertz is coming off a record-breaking season and Goedert flashed strong potential as a rookie. The tight end spot is a strong one for the Eagles. Perkins played well as the third-string tight end before suffering a season-ending knee injury. He could be back to compete with Ty, or the Eagles could look elsewhere while he recovers. OT, Jason Peters, Lane Johnson, Halapoulivaati Vaitai, Jordan Mailata, Tyreek Burwell. Thoughts: Peters signed a new, cost-effective one-year deal with the Eagles earlier this offseason. That deal should keep the team's longtime bookends together for one final season. Johnson was banged up most of last season, so he should bounce back with a healthy offseason. Vaitai is a polarizing presence at swing tackle and he could see some competition from a draft pick during training camp. Mailata is a wild card and should be treated accordingly. Burwell was brought in on a reserve future deal and he has some experience. Isaac Seumalo, Brandon Brooks, Matt Pryor, Caleb Johnson. Thoughts: Seumalo signed a long-term extension earlier this month and he is now the established starting left guard. Brooks is coming off Achilles surgery, so his status will be worth monitoring throughout the offseason, as he may need to begin the campaign on the physically unable to perform list. Pryor was inactive all of last season, so it will be interesting to see how the team develops him this offseason. If the Eagles fail to address the guard position during free agency or the draft, Pryor could be the team's starting right guard in Week 1 if Brooks can't play. Johnson was on the practice squad and could have a shot at a depth job with a solid preseason. C. Jason Kelce, Anthony Fabiano thoughts. Kelce put an end to retirement talks after he signed a lucrative one-year extension with the Eagles earlier this month. With Stefan Wisniewski's dismissal, the depth behind Kelce is scarce. While Siamalo could fill in at center if Kelce were to go down, that move would greatly weaken the left guard spot. Fabiano is a practice squad journeyman who could have a massive opportunity this offseason. That Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Chris Long, Deshaun Hall, Josh Sweat, Joe Osman thoughts. Following the Bennett trade, the Eagles' defensive end position has depth concerns. Graham, who resigned prior to free agency, will team with Barnett, a former first-round pick, in the starting lineup. Barnett is coming off season-ending shoulder surgery, so the Eagles may need to hedge their bets this offseason. On top of Barnett's potential health issues, Long is still contemplating retirement. If Long were to leave, the defensive end position would be a massive need. Hall, Ostman and Sweat have a lot to prove this offseason to earn rotational reps. DT, Fletcher Cox, Malik Jackson, Trayvon Hester, Bruce Hector thoughts. Cox and Jackson form a formidable duo up front. With Jackson's signing, the Eagles' interior pass rush receives a massive boost. Both Cox and Jackson can demand double teams to open up opportunities for each other. Behind the starters, Hester could be a solid find as a rotational defensive tackle. The jury is still out on Hector, but he showed a lot of potential during last year's training camp. LB, Nigel Bradham, LJ Fort, Camu Grugier Hill, Paul Warrillow, Nathan Jerry, BJ Bello, Asante Brown, Alex Singleton thoughts. Bradham and Grugier Hill return as incumbent starters with Hicks headed to the desert. The Eagles were aggressive in their pursuit of Ford, and his contract indicates he will compete for a starting job. For now, we will slot Ford in as the favorite for the middle linebacker job. A lot can change between now and training camp, but the expectation is that Ford will compete with Jerry and Warrillow for the job. Bello, Brown and Singleton will need to step up on special teams to make the roster in the preseason. CB, Ronald Darby, Jalen Mills, Cravon LeBlanc, Rasul Douglas, Sidney Jones, Josh Hawkins, Shandon Sullivan, Jeremiah McKinnon thoughts. Darby, who resigned Friday, will be the top cornerback on the roster for the third consecutive season. Despite the outside angst regarding his play, the Eagles love Mills and he will probably be one of the team's 2 starting cornerbacks this season. LeBlanc will most likely serve as the starting nickel cornerback. Jones, a former second-round pick, needs to prove he can stay healthy before being handed a starting job. Douglas played very well last season, but he doesn't seem to have the universal backing of the staff. Hawkins, Sullivan and McKinnon will compete to sneak onto the roster as special teams contributors. Malcolm Jenkins, Rodney McLeod, Avonte Maddox, Trey Sullivan, DeAndre Hall, Mercy Mastwan thoughts. The Eagles reworked McLeod's deal to keep him on the roster for another season. He is coming off a season-ending knee injury, so his effectiveness will be tested early. Jenkins is a staple of the defense and one of the best safeties in the league. Maddox, who played well at 3 different positions as a rookie, could inherit the third safety role from departing veteran Corey Graham. Darby's return may force the Eagles to use Maddox at safety next season. Sullivan played well enough last year that he should get a shot at a rotational role next season. Hall and Maston will compete for special teams snaps. Street, Jake Elliott, K. Cameron Johnston, P. Rick Lovato, LS. Thoughts? The incumbent specialists will probably compete unopposed this offseason. Mike K. may be reached at mk@newadvancemedia.com. Follow him on Twitter at Mike E_K. Find NJ.com on Facebook.